in the arena about his maltreatment in detention, about the lack of due process, lack of trial process throughout, and the fact that there is no real legitimate reason for his continued detention, which, as we know, has escalated to the point now that the NIA are asking for the death penalty to be imposed after, of course, a life in prison was imposed a few years ago. We've all had, or at least the legal team, and some of you may have had sight of the affidavit of Mr. Malik, which details a lot more context and background behind his non-violent struggles and movements for Kashmiri liberation. And that's something that's been at the crux of the submissions that we've been instructed to draft on behalf of him, that we would be lodging to the UN working group on arbitrary detention. Now, there are a couple of avenues that we're taking, and Cole will no doubt go into them in a bit more detail, but to give you a general overview, the United Nations have several working groups, and the one that we are focused on is the working group relating to arbitrary detention, and making the case for the fact that this man, who has been the symbol of political resistance, non-violent struggle for liberation, is continuously being detained in this manner without any proper justification. And so there is something called the Urgent Procedure Protocol that we will be lodging submissions under, and that essentially allows us to get a hold of the United Nations, the working group, those in the working group, to lodge this as a matter of urgency. And why it is a matter of urgency is, as we all know, the hearing on the 10th of November at the High Court in Delhi is obviously listed for this matter to be put forward, whether the death penalty is an appropriate penalty or not for Mr. Malik.
That the proceedings faced by Mr. Malik have respected his fair trial rights, have respected his due process rights. It doesn't matter who you are or what charges you face. Every single one of those deserves a fair trial. Where those aren't respected, it undermines the very principles, the very pillars upon which any democracy is based. Mr. Malik has not been able to converse independently with the legal team of his choosing. He has not been able to provide detailed instructions. That same legal team has not been able to provide him with proper and cogent advice as far as any defense is concerned. He is prevented from communicating and seeing his young family. He is held effectively in solitary confinement. This is having a devastating impact on both his physical and mental health. There are fundamental issues with every aspect of his treatment. That is why we are here today. All of these issues, we say, amount to arbitrary detention. And that is why this petition has been drafted and will be filed with the UN Working Group on arbitrary detention, to ask them to investigate and to ask them to initiate an opinion on it, with a view to exerting pressure on India to respect those rights that every citizen has, or at least every citizen should. Human rights are universal. In 1968, the Universal Declaration on Human Rights was signed. That was to protect civilians and individuals against the power of the state. Thereafter, the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights was signed and ratified, again to ensure a citizen's rights are respected by the individual state. India is a state party to the ICCPR. The reality of it is that when we look at Mr. Malik's case, when we look at what has happened previously, and when we look at what he is currently enduring, India cannot be said to be respecting its obligations under the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, under the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. It is not respecting its own judicial system. Mr. Malik is a victim of the power at the state that has been brought against him. So what do we do? As actually as alluded to, first course of action is to submit the petition that has been drafted on his behalf to the UN Working Group on Arbitrary Detention, and again, as noted, to ask them for a review on any one of those 5 issues that AGSO has already raised. We say all of them are present in this case, but even if not, merely one can amount to a positive finding by the UN Working Group. And again, as we've heard by AXA, time is of the essence. As now Mr. Malik is also facing, potentially, the death penalty. Now the death penalty raises its own fundamental